Yeah, 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 yeah.
Welcome to Our Republic. This is Kaia Shivers. Today we're talking to attorney Jaaye Person-Lynn of Person-Lynn Law Offices based in Los Angeles. How are you doing today, attorney Person-Lynn?
I'm doing well, Dr. Shivers. Thanks for having me here for this discussion. I appreciate it.
How do you practice in Los Angeles? What are you doing right now?
Well, I am an abolitionist trying to end slavery. How I make my money is through the practice of criminal defense law, civil rights, little personal injury. Just keeping in the tradition of my alma mater, Howard University School of Law, which I'll be out there next weekend to celebrate our 150th year. And of course, I went to Hampton's 150th year last year, so I just want to make sure that's
Oh, so
clear.
HU.
Yeah, HU. But if all you see is HU, then that means Hampton. When you see I don't wear the HU for Howard unless it says the SL, the hustle on it. But that tradition I only applied to one law school, and it was really because of that tradition of Charles Hamilton, Houston, Thurgood Marshall, and so many others that have come through those halls. That's what I wanted to be associated with. That's what I wanted to be a part of, and that's a big deal for me to be out here on the West Coast where there are no significant black institutions besides maybe Charles Drew University and some churches. But to be down with something that's 150 years old, that's very much powerful for me to be a part of.
For those who do not know what an abolitionist is, can you just define your activism as being an abolitionist?
Yeah, so an abolitionist is somebody working to end slavery in these United States, all over the world, but definitely here in these United States. And as I explained, slavery exists in between the first two commas in the 13th Amendment. Um, the thing about the 13th Amendment, it was only for black people, only for not just black people, the descendants of American slaves. Uh, and because of that, when you leave a caveat within that amendment that allows there to continue to be slavery, that's still only for the descendants of American slaves. As such, it's my goal to actually repeal that 13th Amendment, strike that language in between the commas, and have it read simply slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist in the United States or its territories, period. And the reason that's important, when we look at the numbers of incarceration for black people, aka slaves, they're so extreme. It's a money making business. California currently has 125,000, roughly 125,000 inmates, state prison inmates. There's a few more who are out on parole, and there's a lot more who are in jail. But just state prison inmates, 125,000. Of those 125,000, 27% of those are black men, although black men only make up 3.3% of the state.
Mm.
Now, California Department of Corrections (CDC) has 66,500 employees. So just imagine that number per capita. If we were 3.3% of 125,000 as opposed to 27% of 125,000, then we're talking close to 30,000 people.
Mm.
That's a quarter of the whole system. So if they weren't there, then 17,000, almost 17,000 California Department of Corrections. That would be, it looks like it froze on my screen, but
Yeah, yeah,
okay, I'm
yeah,
back.
yeah, yeah.
And
You
that
back.
and and that's why the abolition is necessary. It's to end the policing for profit, the prosecution for profit, and the punishing for profit. If it's for public safety, that's one thing, but the way we're policed, the way we're treated, it's not for public safety. It's for profit. It's to ensure that the numbers are there in crime, so the police departments can justify their budgets for the next year. So the prosecuting officers can justify their budgets for the next year. So the prison system can justify its budgets for the next year. And these are all industries that society gets no real economic return on. Only the people in those systems get a return. And so that's what I'm trying to end. I'm trying to expose it. And, to do that, I have to get people to recognize that descendants of American slaves are at best second-class citizens, and then maybe we can do something about it. But as long as our law allows for us to be slaves of any capacity, which is important to note, in America, slave is a subhuman status. And that's what allows the treatment by law enforcement of Black people for us to accept it. As a nation, we've accepted it because we've accepted that these Black people can be slaves. So since they can be slaves, there's something that's sub about them already. And that's why, as a society, we allow law enforcement from police, prosecutors, judges, prison guards to all treat us as less human than others. And that's why we have those numbers. And it's not just California. There's only 4 states in which there are more per capita. Another group is locked up more than Black people. And those 4 states are Hawaii, because Native Hawaiians are number 1. Alaska, because Native Alaskans are number 1. North Dakota, Native Americans are number 1 in North Dakota. And in Mississippi, of all places, because there's not that many Latinos, but there's a federal detention center for deportees in Mississippi. So there's a lot of Latinos in that one facility. And because of that, per capita to their population in the state, they're incarcerated at a greater rate than we are. But in those 4 states, we are number 2. And in the other 46 states, we're number 1. And it's not like a close second in really any of these states, where like in California, Black people are incarcerated at a rate of over 3,000 per 100,000, and Latinos are incarcerated at a rate of about 1,000 for every 100,000. So we're incarcerated at rates 3 times greater than Latinos. That's, if it was just a socioeconomic issue, then we'd be incarcerated at the same rates. But those numbers prove it's not just a socioeconomic issue, it's a racial issue, it's a slavery issue, and that's what I'm working to end.
What is your response on people who say, well, if you are trying to abolish the prison system or the system of incarceration, what would be in place?
I'm not trying to abolish the prison system. I'm trying to abolish the system of slavery. In the 1700s in the United States of America, if you were a white person and you got caught stealing, there was a prison system for you. That's what it was for. So that prison system was already there. There's already a system of punishment in place. What I'm trying to abolish is the unnecessary police contacts that end up enslaving us. I'm trying to abolish judges looking at these Black men coming in these chains, in these uniforms, in these slave uniforms, as slaves, looking at them as human beings, having prosecutors looking at them as human beings, not job security. That's what I'm trying to end. And when we look at it, we cannot say that public safety is increased by mass incarceration. That's just not happening. We were much safer in our day-to-day lives when people weren't being incarcerated at these great numbers, or let me use the correct language, enslaved at these great numbers. So this enslavement is just really working to the detriment of American society, definitely the detriment of the communities of descendants of American slaves. And it's not working to America's benefit. It's an unsustainable system. So for America's benefit, America needs to change this system in this system of slavery. But if because at least in the older slavery that we know, the chattel slavery, there was actual profit from that. The cotton sales, the tobacco sales, the sugarcane sales, that got us profit. We're not making profit. It's just the state paying into this system that's not giving any real profit. Although there are a lot of inmates who are working with slave wages, like real slave wages, like 30 cents a day type slave wages. So once again, if we do abolish slavery, then they would have to pay these inmates, at least minimum wage, which would make it less profitable for companies to use slave labor. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Let me ask this, and then we're going to move on. This is very interesting. So to make the argument, or to bring the argument, or what you pointed out is that what is going on today is actually um, not a profit and degrading American society. When you are explaining this to somebody who does not necessarily have a family member or a friend who's been in jail or had that experience, what would you say to them? Like, what is a real substantial example of how this erodes American society in general?
Well, this system it does not correct anyone. It's not rehabilitative, and I can't say that. There's some people who are corrected. There's some people who go to prison and say, I'm never going to do this again. And, they come out, they live productive lives. But there's very little resources for those that want to improve themselves. And in those scenarios, let's say someone is working to try and get a college degree while incarcerated, but then something happens at the prison and they get put on a month-long lockdown. Now that class is over with. They got to start all the way over again. So for those who don't have anyone in the system and can't see it up close and personal, I just encourage them to do their research and encourage them to look at the recidivism numbers, to look at the fact that almost 3/4 of people who go to prison go back, especially Black people, and see that it's just money going in to this system of slavery.
But somebody might say, look, a white person in the suburbs will say, that has nothing to do with me. If a Black person gets locked up and they keep going to jail, I'm in my suburb, I'm good. I don't see the connection of how this Black person continuously going to jail has a direct effect on me.
Well, and that's until the money runs out, right? Like in California, until the reserves got so low that you could see the physical difference, then people took it serious. Then people started being more water conscious all around the state. And that's what they need to realize is going to happen. The money will run out one day. They will continue, if they continue to lock these people up, they continue to one is going to cause more destruction. It's going to be more riots. It's going to come to your doorstep, because this is the spirit of those in this nation, right? The white Americans in this nation went to war because they were taxed without representation. They weren't even slaves. They weren't even being whipped and beaten and made to work without being paid. They were being paid. They just had to pay taxes and couldn't vote on some of the laws. So that's what sent them to war. So for us, it's deeper than that. It's not just that we're unable to vote, which you can't do if you're incarcerated. We still have to pay taxes, and society is not getting that get back. And it's hard for me to prove how it affects them directly. I just have to hope that they'll realize that it's an unsustainable system. And if it does go if it does go broke, right? And then these, prison guards aren't able to be paid because the government went broke, and the prisoners, you know, to somehow bust out, and now they're in society just unchecked, mad, knowing that none of y'all did nothing to help them. That's when we're at, the dark ages of America, and we're headed in that direction. And that's the best I could tell them. A lot of them are just going to believe it won't happen, but a lot of them probably never thought gas would be $4 a gallon. And this is our lifetime. This ain't that long ago where gas was $1 a gallon in California. So I'd imagine what it was around the rest of the country. But look at just how much gas prices have risen, and they're never going back down. So that's just one of the examples on how things can drastically change if we continue down a road of an unsustainable system.
What does a civil rights attorney in Los Angeles or in California look like? What's your day to day?
Um, Man, that's no 2 days the same. But we spend a lot of time in court, spend a lot of time at these police stations, boardrooms. We do a lot of resolving stuff behind the scenes because it's more so about trying to get this right as opposed to trying to make somebody look bad. It's been times where maybe we should have just, put it all out there in the media and whatnot. But we figured here's an opportunity for these officers to learn. And, if they are sincere about it, then maybe we can change the experience for the next 1,000 people and, create some of that social capital, knowing that we could have took them through the fire and we didn't based on their agreement.
I thank you, Attorney Jaaye Person-Lynn. I would like to know just very quickly if anybody is in need of your legal services, how can we get in contact with you?
I'm definitely on Facebook, Jaaye Person-Lynn. Half my cases start as Facebook or Instagram messages. Instagram, Lincoln Lawyer LA. And if you just want to find where I'm at and the attorneys I deal with, the fightforjustice.com. That's the website for Attorney Jovan Blacknell. We're all in the same office. We all work together. So I'll probably just give me a little Fight for Justice email or something. But yeah, I'm definitely reachable. And I can be contacted 424-261-2075 if anybody's listening in California and needs some legal representation. And whatever your issue is, I mainly do criminal defense, civil rights, and a little personal injury. But whatever your issue is, I know an attorney that can help you. And that's whether you want to keep it black or not. We got attorneys that'll be able to help you. And whether they black or not, these people have been vetted to be able to do a good job for the people that we send their way.
All right, thank you.